What if the person you look down on today becomes the one who saves your life tomorrow? This is the story of a powerful businessman, a humble janitor, and the life-changing advice that proved wisdom has nothing to do with status or wealth. Richard Hayes was everything people dreamed of being. He had built an empire from scratch. At least that's what he always claimed. He wore $1,000 suits, drove luxury cars, and his name was respected, or rather, feared, in the corporate world. But there was one problem. Richard believed success made him better than everyone else. He mocked waiters if they got his order wrong, ignored doormen when they greeted him, and treated employees like replaceable tools. In the lobby of his company worked Mr. Lewis, a quiet janitor in his late 60s. Every morning, Richard would see Lewis mopping the marble floors, humming to himself. And every morning Richard would sneer. "Still cleaning floors at your age?" Richard once said, loud enough for others to hear. "Should have studied harder. Maybe then you wouldn't be invisible." Lewis just smiled politely, nodded, and went back to work. Weeks later, Richard faced the biggest decision of his career. A massive investment opportunity had landed on his desk. If he went through with it, his company would triple in size. But there was a catch. Hidden in the fine print was a clause that would bankrupt hundreds of small businesses and leave thousands of employees jobless. Richard's boardroom was filled with tension. Advisors urged him to take the deal. "It's business," they said. "If you don't, someone else will." That night, Richard stayed late at the office, staring at the contract. His empire, his reputation, his future, it all rested on this choice. But for the first time in his life, Richard felt trapped. As midnight approached, the office was empty, except for the sound of a mop gliding across the floor. "Still here, Mr. Hayes?" It was Lewis, the janitor, emptying trash bins. Richard scoffed. "Yes, Lewis. Some of us have important decisions to make. Not everyone has the luxury of pushing a mop around." Lewis chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised how many important decisions get made while pushing a mop." Richard frowned, annoyed, but something in Lewis's tone caught his attention. Against his ego, he asked, "What do you mean by that?" Lewis leaned on the handle of his mop. "When you mop floors, you see people's messes. Spilled coffee, broken glass, muddy footprints. You can clean it up quickly, or you can ignore it and hope no one notices. But the longer you ignore it, the bigger the mess becomes. Eventually, someone slips, someone gets hurt. That's how choices work, Mr. Hayes. Small messes ignored become disasters later." Richard stared, stunned. He hadn't expected such words from a janitor. Lewis continued, "Ask yourself, do you want to build something people admire, or something people fear? Money builds walls, but respect builds bridges. Which one will last longer when the storm comes?" That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Lewis's words haunted him. Money builds walls, respect builds bridges. He replayed the janitor's analogy about cleaning messes. By morning, Richard had made his decision. In the boardroom, when everyone expected him to sign the contract, he pushed it aside. "No deal," he said firmly. "We're not destroying lives for profit." The room erupted with protests, but Richard stood his ground. For the first time, he thought less about numbers and more about people. A week later, Richard went looking for Lewis, wanting to thank him. But when he asked around, he learned something that shook him to his core. Mr. Lewis wasn't just a janitor. Decades ago, he had been a respected professor of philosophy. But when his wife fell ill, he abandoned his career to care for her, taking whatever job allowed him to be by her side. After she passed, he never returned to teaching. Instead, he lived simply, working quietly, offering wisdom only to those willing to listen. Richard was humbled. For the first time in his life, he bowed his head to another man. "Thank you, Lewis," he whispered. "You saved me from myself." Wisdom doesn't wear a suit, nor does it shine with wealth. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. Remember this. Every person you look down on has a story you don't know, a wisdom you might one day need. Treat people with respect, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. So, what would you have done if you were in Richard's shoes? Would you have taken the deal, or walked away? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And remember, the janitor might be the wisest man in the room.